Michael Faraday, Biography, Facts, and Pictures. Lived 1791 to 1867. Michael Faraday, who came from a very poor family, became one of the greatest scientists in history. His achievement was remarkable in a time when science was usually the preserve of people born into wealthy families. The unit of electrical capacitance is named the farad in his honor, with the symbol F. Education and early life. Michael Faraday was born on September 22, 1791 in London, England, UK. He was the third child of James and Margaret Faraday. His father was a blacksmith who suffered poor health. Before marriage, his mother had been a servant. The family lived in a degree of poverty. Michael Faraday attended a local school until he was 13, where he received a basic education. To earn money for the family, he started working as a delivery boy for a bookshop. He worked hard and impressed his employer. After a year, he was promoted to become an apprentice bookbinder. Bookbinding and discovering science. Michael Faraday was eager to learn more about the world. He did not restrict himself to binding the shop's books. After working hard each day, he spent his free time reading the books he had bound. Gradually, he found he was reading more and more about science. Two books in particular captivated him. The Encyclopedia Britannica, his source for electrical knowledge, and much more. Conversations on Chemistry, 600 pages of chemistry for ordinary people written by Jane Marcet. He became so fascinated that he started spending part of his meager pay on chemicals and apparatus to confirm the truth of what he was reading. As he learned more about science, he heard that the well-known scientist John Tatum was going to give a series of public lectures on natural philosophy, physics. To attend the lectures, the fee would be 1 shilling, too much for Michael Faraday. His older brother, a blacksmith, impressed by his brother's growing devotion to science, gave him the shilling he needed. It is worth saying that the parallels in the lives of Michael Faraday and Joseph Henry are rather striking. Both were born in poverty, had fathers who often could not work because of ill health, became apprentices, were inspired to become scientists by reading particular books, were devoutly religious, became laboratory assistants. Their greatest contributions were made in the same scientific era in the field of electrical science, and both have an SI unit named in their honor. Introduction to Humphrey Davy and more science. Faraday's education took another step upward when William Dance, a customer of the bookshop, asked if he would like tickets to hear Sir Humphry Davy lecturing at the Royal Institution. Sir Humphry Davy was one of the most famous scientists in the world. Faraday jumped at the chance and attended 4 lectures about one of the newest problems in chemistry, defining acidity. He watched Davy perform experiments at the lectures. This was the world he wanted to live in, he told himself. He took notes and then made so many additions to the notes that he produced a 300-page handwritten book, which he bound and sent to Davy as a tribute. At this time, Faraday had begun more sophisticated experiments at the back of the bookshop, building an electric battery using copper coins and zinc discs separated by moist, salty paper. He used his battery to decompose chemicals such as magnesium sulfate. This was the type of chemistry Humphrey Davy had pioneered. In October 1812, Faraday's apprenticeship ended, and he began work as a bookbinder with a new employer, whom he found unpleasant. Others' misfortunes help Faraday. And then there was a fortunate, for Faraday, accident. Sir Humphry Davy was hurt in an explosion when an experiment went wrong. This temporarily affected his ability to write. Faraday managed to get work for a few days taking notes for Davy, who had been impressed by the book Faraday had sent him. There were some advantages to being a bookbinder after all. When his short time as Davy's note-taker ended, Faraday sent a note to Davy, asking if he might be employed as his assistant. Soon after this, one of Davy's laboratory assistants was fired for misconduct, and Davy sent a message to Faraday asking him if he would like the job of chemical assistant. Would he like the job? Working in the Royal Institution, with one of the most famous scientists in the world? There could only be one answer. Faraday's lifetime in context. Faraday began work at the Royal Institution of Great Britain at the age of 21 on March 1, 1813. His salary was good, and he was given a room in the Royal Institution's attic to live in. He was very happy with the way things had turned out. He was destined to be associated with the Royal Institution for 54 years, ending up as a professor of chemistry. His first job was as a chemical assistant, preparing apparatus for experiments and lectures. This involved working with nitrogen trichloride, the explosive which had already injured Davy. Faraday himself was knocked unconscious briefly by another nitrogen chloride explosion, and then Davy was injured again, finally putting an end to work with that particular substance. After just 7 months at the Royal Institution, Davy took Faraday as his secretary on a tour of Europe that lasted 18 months. During this time Faraday met great scientists such as André-Marie Ampère in Paris and Alessandro Volta in Milan. In some ways, the tour acted like a university education, and Faraday learned a lot from it. He was, however, unhappy for much of the tour, because in addition to his scientific and secretarial work, he was required to be a personal servant to Davy and Davy's wife, which he did not enjoy. Davy's wife refused to treat Faraday as an equal, because he had come from a lower-class family. Back in London, though, things began to look better again. The Royal Institution renewed Faraday's contract and increased his salary. Davy even began to acknowledge him in academic papers. Indebted to Mr. Michael Faraday for much able assistance. In 1816, aged 24, Faraday gave his first ever lecture, on the properties of matter, to the City Philosophical Society. And he published his first ever academic paper, discussing his analysis of calcium hydroxide, in the Quarterly Journal of Science. In 1821, aged 29, he was promoted to be superintendent of house and laboratory of the Royal Institution. He also married Sarah Barnard. He and his bride lived in rooms in the Royal Institution for most of the next 46 years, no longer in attic rooms. They lived in a comfortable suite Humphrey Davy himself had once lived in. In 1824, aged 32, he was elected to the Royal Society. This was recognition that he had become a notable scientist in his own right. In 1825, aged 33, he became director of the Royal Institution's laboratory. In 1833, aged 41, he became Fullerian Professor of Chemistry at the Royal Institution of Great Britain. He held this position for the rest of his life. In 1848, aged 54, and again in 1858 he was offered the presidency of the Royal Society, but he turned it down. Michael Faraday's scientific achievements and discoveries. It would be easy to fill a book with details of all of Faraday's discoveries, in both chemistry and physics. It is not an accident that Albert Einstein used to keep photos of 3 scientists in his office: Isaac Newton, James Clerk Maxwell, and Michael Faraday. Funnily enough, although in Faraday's lifetime people had started to use the word physicist, Faraday disliked the word and always described himself as a philosopher. He was a man devoted to discovery through experimentation, and he was famous for never giving up on ideas which came from his scientific intuition. If he thought an idea was a good one, he would keep experimenting through multiple failures until he got what he expected, or until he finally decided that Mother Nature had shown his intuition to be wrong, but in Faraday's case, this was rare. Here are some of his most notable discoveries. 1821, discovery of electromagnetic rotation. 1823, gas liquefaction and refrigeration. 1831, discovery of electromagnetic induction. 1834, Faraday's laws of electrolysis. 1836, invention of the Faraday cage. 1845, discovery of the Faraday effect, a magneto-optical effect. Michael Faraday died aged 75 on August 25, 1867 in London. He was survived by his wife Sarah. They had no children. He had been a devout Christian all of his life, belonging to a small branch of the religion called Sandemanians. During his life, he was offered burial in Westminster Abbey along with Britain's kings and queens and scientists of the stature of Isaac Newton. He turned this down, in favor of a more modest resting place. His grave, where Sarah is also buried, can still be seen in London's Highgate Cemetery.